Welcome to Strength Chat Podcast, presented by Kabuki Strength. Introducing your hosts, Chris Duffin, the mad scientist of strength, Rudy Cadlow, mature athlete and coach, and the wizard of training himself, Brandon Sen.
Today on Strength Chat, we have four-time world champion Highland Games competitor Dan McKim, who is also the six-time U.S. national champion. We dive into all things Highland Games. If you're not familiar with the sport, we talk a little bit about what's involved. We talk about Dan's past and how he got into the sport and his progressions throughout his career. We also talk a little bit about how to get involved with the sport, and Dan has a lot of resources himself that you can check out, both on Amazon, and he actually offers to send it out to you if you're interested. So enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Strength Chat with your host. That's right, the mad scientist of strength himself, myself, Chris Duffin. To my left, the wizard of training, the one, the only, Brandon Sen. And to my right, the man who almost pulled 300 kilos but didn't quite. Someday he'll be welcome to manhood with a 650 pull. Yesterday, was that yesterday?
It was
Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday. So Brady did a USAPL meet, a little warm-up, tune-up meet. Didn't push himself too hard. Not quite hard enough.
Missed attempts would suggest otherwise.
Yeah, well, whatever.
I missed one squat, but I think that still beats Brandon's best meet deadlift.
Does not, in fact. Ties it.
In the USAPL?
Does it matter?
Yes.
It's all powerlifting.
You guys need to do some pulling now.
Brady's in my weight class now.
Brady's got to, with that setup, he's got to get on that deadlift bar. Do a USPA meet, I think.
That might be happening in the next month or so.
You got to get that 800 pull in.
Yeah, well, I'll push
and that 400 Wilks.
Yeah.
Got to really push for that Wilks.
Yeah.
Speaking of 800, we got a little event going on, a little fundraising, a little awareness for the Special Olympics. That's right. So here at Kabuki Strength, one of our coaches, Coach Cassandra, has been involved this last year with coaching one of the Special Olympics powerlifting teams. And a lot of people aren't aware about Special Olympics powerlifting, but it's a really cool thing if you've ever seen it, and I've seen it myself actually several times, is watching these individuals compete or get involved with the sport. It's just such a rewarding thing to see, like the boost in self-confidence, esteem. And we're not talking about just like the overall impact of getting stronger, healthier, all that sort of stuff, but just the mental aspect of it is really great to see. So we've decided to support Cassandra in that and take it a step further. So this fall, we're going to be hosting our first Special Olympics meet here. And if you check out our social media, you'll see that I am doing a Squat Everyday campaign fundraiser. We've got a GoFundMe page set up so that to support the Special Olympics. And so I'm squatting 800 pounds every day. I'm 10 days in. About day 9, I felt like I got hit by a freight train, but I felt pretty good yesterday. So, yeah, check it out on social media. You'll see what's going on. You'll see the links for that. Andre, do we have that up on the main site as well? It's up on Kabuki Strength as well somewhere. I have no idea where, but I'm sure you can find it.
What's the goal of the campaign in terms of dollar amount? Do we know?
Well, the goal originally was $1,000, but we got that in 5 hours.
Yeah.
So I think we bumped it to 20,000. So I don't know.
Excellent.
2,000? What? I don't.
More.
It's to collect more. It's to collect more. How's that?
That's good.
So, anything to add on that? I think I covered it pretty well.
I'm looking forward to your body breaking in the next 20 days.
Yeah, I know. That's why I keep tempering it with it's squat 30 days unless I die. Then I'll stop. So if I die, I will stop. But
push it to 40. Who cares?
Maybe I will.
We don't care about squats.
Maybe I will.
Freaks.
All right. Well, shall we get to today's program?
Yes.
Okay, we will. Today we've got Dan McKim on, or Daniel McKim. Do you got a preference with Dan or Daniel?
Just not Danny.
Not Danny. Okay, all right, Danny. So,
well, that's your name now.
Awesome.
So, I've known Dan, gosh darn, for quite some time. I can't remember when we first started talking. It might have been like close to like 10 years ago, maybe. I'm not quite sure. But Dan has competed in the Highland Games at a pretty high level. as in 4-time world champion and 6 times national champion. But Dan, I think a lot of our audience may not be all too familiar with what's involved with Highland Games. So can you start out a little bit about explaining your accomplishments and what's involved with the sport?
Yeah, Chris. I think we met years ago up in Portland. Had many times competing up there. So you go way back. For those of you who don't know, Chris came out and watched one year, and we tried to get him to do crazy stuff like he usually does. So that's always fun. Yeah, man, I'm 6-time world champion, 6-time U.S. champion, 4-time world champion in Scotch Highland Games. And honestly, man, I got into it just from throwing. And that's how a lot of people do, throwing in high school and college, and you just want to keep training. You want to keep pushing the body. And that's the biggest thing is how can I continue to train and continue to do something when I realized real quickly I'm not going to make it to the Olympics.
Yeah.
So started throwing as an amateur for 3 years and then turned pro. And
so tell us what's involved with the different events and a little bit about the series and the difference between amateur and pro.
Yeah. The different events, I like to describe it best as it's like a decathlon for big guys without the running, right? So you've got 8 events. You throw typically on championships 2 days. You're throwing 2 stones, 2 weights, 2 hammers, a weight over bar, which is kind of like keg toss for height, and then a caber, which is the long pole everybody recognizes. And it kind of how our sport works, which is different than others, is you work up your years through the ranks, right? So as I become an amateur, I stayed in the Midwest. I'm from Missouri, so I stayed around here and I competed regionally. I started to get my name out there a little more, invited to national competitions as an amateur, and that was from 04 to 07. 07, I turned pro. I was the number 1 ranked amateur in the world at the time I turned pro, and then from there competed. And then it's almost like you start over again, right? It's not like you can just jump in and head to a Worlds. You've got to spend your time trying to get your name out there again, getting your recognition, getting your marks up, and then you qualify and get invited to nationals and the Worlds as you grow from there.
Excellent. So you said you got involved in it coming from the throwing background, coming out of high school and college. It seems that that's a pretty common way for people to get involved with Highland Games, although I have seen some people kind of transition, it seems like, from like Strongman as a second event or type scenario. But is that pretty accurate that it's a lot of, college, collegiate, shot put, discus type throwers getting involved, hammer, whatnot?
Sure, that is where a lot of us come from, quite honestly, is we come from that background. But again, you're right. There's a lot of guys that come from that powerlifting or the strongman community. They want to try something different, try a new challenge. And that's what I think is cool about strength sports, right, is we're all looking for a different challenge, whether we're looking for a new big deadlift like Brady, or we're looking for a big bench or whatever it is, or a big strongman comp we're going to hit. We're all looking to push, and we're all looking to find a new challenge. And I think that's what's cool is this sport, Highland Games, has brought in so many powerlifters and so many strongmen. They're just looking for something different to try.
Excellent. So what does the training look like as far as compared to some of those traditional like strength sports such as powerlifting, strongmen? How does that look, and how does it compare also to some of the training that happens on, let's say that collegiate level, throwing level? Is it pretty similar to that? Does things start changing? Do you have, an annual cycle like in preps for Worlds, Nationals? Can you walk us through that process a little bit, Dan?
Sure, man. That's a good question. That's what's cool. I think about Highland Games and how it's different than track and field throwing. The events in track and field are much lighter, right? The heaviest event you'll throw in college is a 16-pound stone, a 16-pound shot or a 16-pound hammer, right? In the Highland Games, you'll throw a 56-pound weight for distance. You'll throw a 160-pound caber, and so it's much of the same athlete, but it's a different athlete. That's why I think powerlifters and strongmen find success in the Highland Games, is because it is a stronger event, and that's why some throwers in college don't find the same success when they're throwing the Highland Games, because and that's what I think. Aside from just God blessing my career greatly in the things that he's done through it, is the fact that I was not a great thrower in college. Like, I was at times a struggling D2 guy that realized real quick I'm never going to make it to the Olympics, right? I'm a slow twitch guy. I know that. Like I'm just amazed at some of these. I mean, you've all seen it, right? The old Warner Gunther videos.
Oh,
of
yeah.
training. It's incredible, and to see some of the things that shot putters and discus and hammer throwers do, and I just look at myself and I'm like, well, that's not you, big guy. You got T-Rex arms and you got a 28-inch vertical. It's just not going to be you. So that's what's cool about the Highland Games is it involved for me. I'm not the strongest guy in the world. I'm not the most, but I'm also not the best fast twitch guy. It's like that combination that I was able to find that worked well for my body type and honestly my training type.
Do you feel
that actually didn't answer your question at all.
That's all right. It was a good discussion. So we'll just dive in more with some more questions and dig it out. So
Yeah.
Do you feel like for especially Highland Games that people can get by just being complete, force monsters instead of, having great technique like a traditional shot or disc or something like that would require? Can guys get away at a really high level with just being purely strength athletes, or, what is the actual technique component involved in the Highland Games? Because, just from we've had a few lifters from our gym just go dabble in Highland Games a little bit, really strong guys and done okay. But talk to the technique side of the Highland Games and how important that is.
Man, Brandon. That's a good point because it's so much marrying the two together, right? If I look back on my career, and I recently retired in September, right? So I finally hung it up. My wife and I have 5 boys at home, and they're getting into sports and activities and just life, and I've just sacrificed a lot.
5, and you called me crazy.
Yeah. And so that's what I've found is I am not going to outstrength any guys in my career. I'm not going to out athleticism anybody, especially. But in my mind, I've always been, I'm going to outwork you, right? So the thousands of hours, thousands and thousands of throws I've done in the field. So guys come out, Brandon, so it's kind of cool that you see is in the Highland Games, you see guys that are just brute strong. And they'll come out and like, doggone, and they'll beat you. They'll come out and win. Maybe they'll win in the weight over bar. They'll do decent in the caber just because they're brute strong. And they'll even do well in the Braemar stone, which is just a standing heavy stone throw. And it's like, man. But then they struggle in the events that are more technical, which is the open stone, the lightweight for distance, the light hammer, the hammer events. And then you've got guys that come out that's from track and field background. They're technicians. Man, they throw the hammer really well. But boy, they're 230. They need to be, if they want to be super competitive, they probably better put on 30 to 60 pounds. And so they realize, wow, I need that strength component. Because when I started in the Highland Games, I was 255. 6'5", 255 coming out of college. I mean, I remember walking out my first comp. I had shorts. I had the sleeveless T-shirt. And at the time, I was a D2 All-American shot putter, just barely 8th place, which is the worst you can do and still
You still call yourself an All-American. All right.
Exactly. Yeah. What's funny is my coach told me, too, he's like, hey, man, no matter what, no one can take this from you. You're an All-American. I'm like, yeah, I won't ever say that. I still say it all the time. And I walked out there and I'm like, man, I'm going to be pretty good at this. I'm all right. And I started watching guys. I'm like, dude, that dude's a 3+ and he's a pro, or that guy's 285 and he's a lighter guy. And I realized, man, I'm lacking in that strength and that size. I got to put it on. So Brandon, that's a great question because they've got to marry the both. And that's why I think it's so cool. And of course, it's been my favorite strength sport is that it's a good combination of everything.
Now, is the Highland Games broken up into weight divisions like other strength sports, or is it just the big boys going out and throwing implements? Yeah,
it's just, honestly, it's the big guys. You can, in the U.S., you can throw, it's under 200 is considered lightweight class. And, but again, no other, I think Canada also throws lightweight, but nobody in the rest of the world throws lightweight division. So primarily it is agreed upon. It is a heavy, that's why it's called the Scottish heavy events. It's all from the heavy stuff, yeah.
I suppose the big guys are the most interesting to watch anyway, and I guess that's true in all strength sports. Everyone wants to see the heavyweights go in powerlifting or weightlifting or,
Strongman.
But more so in that, too, because it's not just a weight on a bar. Like, it's this big, heavy stone. Like, there's one stone. You're throwing it.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah.
Back when who
can throw it the most?
Back when we had a record board in the gym, I remember I created our record board. It was probably 5 years ago. And Duffin wouldn't allow me to put anyone on there who was under 181 pounds. There's no 165 pounds, there's no 148, no 132. You had to get bigger. So I think we can all appreciate that.
That's funny. 'Cause there's a lot of 165s that were here at that time.
Yeah, I know.
And were there? I don't remember.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah, they weren't real. Like,
So I have a slightly expanded take on Chris's question. He was asking about like long-term training and stuff. Obviously, you knew you had to get bigger and stronger. So what was your training quality focus? Like, did you spend a lot of the year trying to develop just like static strength? Did you have, how big were your like power blocks that you were working on specifically on that? What did your kind of yearly layout look like?
Yeah, man, I've always been, because throwing is different than some of the other, what do we call Olympic sports, right? But it's much like, that's why it's such a great strength sport. It's much like powerlifting, Olympic lifting. Linear progression for me, right, is so that I can see where I want to peak. Much like powerlifting or strongman, especially with powerlifting, Olympic lifting, I know where I want to peak. And so many times I'm training through, and it was hard to do. And honestly, when I first started, I didn't do it well. I was trying to peak for every comp. I might go to 12, 13 comps that year. I'm like, whoa, I got to throw far at this one. And then so-and-so is going to be at that one. And I better bring it then. And then I found out by the end of the season, I'm like, wow, I'm not throwing very well at the end of the season at all.
Imagine that.
What happened? Yeah, exactly. I can't peak for everything. This is ridiculous. So it's hard to do that. And that's one of the hardest things with people when they start out. They're like, well, I said, what do you want to peak at, right? If I'm giving them training advice or I'm trying to help them with some of the programming, it's like, where do you want to peak? You're like, well, all the time. Well, it's just not going to happen, right? You can't do that. And it's getting people to understand they've got to train through that. And I didn't, and that was honestly a hurdle that I had to get past, is realizing I'm going to sacrifice at some of these early comps to make me ready for the big ones. And that gets easier, honestly, as you get to be a pro. You want to peak for worlds and for nationals. That's when I want to peak. So when I first started to get bigger, I was just like, how am I going to do this? And that was just, honestly, is just eat. And I'm for throwing, I'm a big believer in the core lifts, right? My core lifts are bench, squat, of course, bench, back squat, hang clean, hang snatch, and occasional front squat. So those are my big movements. I found that if I can hone in and focus on those, get those done in the gym, it enables me to throw farther out in the field.
And then to kind of tag along with that, how much of the, if you're in season or in one of your big training cycles for a major competition, how much of your weekly training is spent actually in the gym and how much of it is in the field honing in your technique? And do you find that too much weight training takes away from the technical aspect, or are they kind of married?
Yeah, Brandon, I think for me it's got to be, I'm still a meathead, right? I was the guy in college, and again, if we come back to bad training, right? So I was the guy in college that we started doing our throwers workouts. And all those weren't hard enough. So I wanted to do the football workouts, right? We didn't have a strength coach for us in college, right? So I would come in and do the football workout that would take an hour and a half or so. And then I would wait around and I would be right there. Hey, guys, everybody comes in for the throwers workout. And I would work out another hour and a half doing the throwers workout. And then I'd go out in the field or out to the throws, and I would throw practice for 2 hours. And then I'd go to the track. We might do sprints for 30 minutes to an hour. And I was like, man, I am getting no gains. What is the deal? I must not be working hard enough. And I look back now and I'm like, you idiot. I was under eating. I was overtraining. I mean, I was just a wreck. But I was working so hard, and I thought if I would just hit it, So I find that in the season for me, honestly, in season, it's been 4 days a week in the gym and then typically 3 or 4 days in the field. Now, off season, I hit 5 days a week in the gym just because I'm a meathead. And that's why a lot of guys will argue with me, and they'll say that they've got to spend 2 days a week in the gym during the season just to keep things fresh. I'm like, dude, it's 6 months long. Like I've got to hit those weights, and I've got to hit my strength numbers because it is such a big part of what we do. So I've got to find that time. And that's what some people aren't always willing to do. And I think that's in all areas of life too, is what are you willing to sacrifice to accomplish what you want to accomplish? And for me, it's always been sleep, right? And that's another thing. 5 kids, I'm kind of used to not sleeping much. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to train at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, get up 4:30, 5 o'clock and go train for work all day. And then I got time in the evenings to go throw. But there's got to be that balance for me, especially in this sport. If you still got to do your lifts, you still got to be strong.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point, and it's something that we've talked about quite a bit. I can't remember the guests that we had on, but it was in talking about keep maintaining an athlete's.
I think that was on the one with Tim Gabbett.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about what's the what's the benefits to reducing an athlete's actual workload in season, talking about for sports that actually have seasons, so most of the team sports, versus keeping their training loads moderately high, not necessarily high into where it's like a real adaptive load, but high enough to where they're not actually detraining. Because logically, you want athletes to be fresh, but you can't have them slowly decaying through an entire training year, only to restart at a lower point.
You're not going to stay fresh for 6 months.
Yeah. So the idea was to maintain training loads in an attempt to give their body a reason to be robust or resilient, instead of having a week off and then go hit it hard on game day, week off, game day. So I think that's always really an interesting topic, and one that's probably the most polarizing across major sports, not just strength sports. But
yeah, I really love that discussion with Tim Gavitt. So if anybody's interested in checking that out, go Google it, I guess, because I don't remember the episode number. But
yeah, because it's interesting, because Dan, that you probably haven't seen that episode, but you're kind of talking about the same thing in terms of keeping your actual training. He calls it the chronic training load higher throughout the entire year, instead of cutting it off and actually detraining athletes. So.
That's where I'm a lot more scientific. I just want to feel swole all year. So that's what I'm.
That's it. That's completely it. So how long have you been maintaining that 4:30 a.m. training time?
Yeah, I did that. Now, granted, now I work from home, so I don't have an hour to drive in for work. So typically it's a 5:30 get up and train. But I did that for 12, 13 years.
Wow.
But then again, that's just, and it kind of comes back to the meathead in me, right? I just love to train. So I'm going to train and lift, whether or not I'm throwing or not, just because I love it. And so it's a lot easier to get up to go train for me than it is to get up and go to work for all those years. So I think it honestly helped me not be late to work.
I think that's I hit on this point a lot, but sometimes people just miss the value of doing what you enjoy, just for that mental happiness, all the things that come along with it. Not everything always all the time has to be like scientific for this reason or that reason why I'm doing it to get this response. Like, I like it,
I like it.
That's why you're doing Highland Games to begin with. You like it. So, don't make it so that it becomes something that you hate. If you're training and doing stuff in a manner that causes you to end up not enjoying the process, you're missing the whole point of like why you're doing it to begin with.
And so for you guys, let me ask you, so where's the balance, right? Because sometimes you have goals in mind and you're going to train to achieve those goals. But somebody may say, well, you need to train differently. You need to train this way. But you as an athlete or you as a person, I don't like to train that way. So where's the balance in finding how you like to train to achieve your goals?
I think there's you've got to look at what the competitive season is, and I think I think Misha is a good example out of Russia, where there's a lot of times in the off season you'll see him post like some crazy weird ass stuff that he's doing, and his comment is for the soul. But when it comes to the training season, there's no more for the soul stuff. It's very focused, specific work. He's doing that, but he's he takes times during the year when he can to just do stuff that makes him feel good, and he's an incredible lifter, and so I think that's where you got to look at it. I mean, like if you're prepping for nationals or worlds, you need to be focused and have your shit together, and be hitting everything on the money like you need to be. And it's not time to be dinking around because I want to go bench press for reps today or whatever. It's not to plan. It's not the time for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for me. That's always been the struggle. I hate to squat. Chris, you and I have squatted together before. You've seen me.
Yep.
I'm not a skilled squatter, and so I would do that. You're like, do I want to squat today or bench press reps? Yeah, I'm going to bench press. So that's it's putting sometimes putting your wants aside, right, and what you need to do.
Yep. That last time we squatted together, didn't I squat with 300 pounds on the bar and then you sitting on top of my shoulders?
That's how much he hates to squat. He'll sit on top of you while you
sit on top of me.
I think it was a world record too.
It was definitely a world record. Yeah, it was the heaviest McKim squat I've ever seen. So
The McKim squat.
The McKim squat.
A new variation.
Yeah,
You've never done a McKim squat? Well, first you got to get a McKim on your shoulders, right?
That was fun. That was man. I was 305 at the time, and you had like 385 on the bar or something.
Yeah. I just squatted 800, and then for some reason we decided to do that. I can't remember why. So.
Yeah. Well, I squatted 800 too, but you just walked away. You missed it.
Oh yeah, I totally remember that now. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You were the one that did it. I missed.
Yeah.
Dan, you've been doing this for a very long time, both at the collegiate side and in throwing events and in the Highland Games now. What do you think your biggest obstacle in either training or preparing to train or in competition has been through your entire training career?
Man, I think time, right? So in college, you have all the time in the world. In high school, you have all the time in the world. Everybody talks about how I love hearing college kids and how busy they are, and that's not much. It's like, dude, wait till you get a job and you get a wife and you get kids. It's finding, and honestly, man, my biggest struggle has been time. My biggest obstacle, and I'll tell you that in two folds. In the sense of just realistically time. It's just hard to find time. You're working full time. You're commuting. I was commuting in the city and doing those things, but also just time, just family, man. And that's probably, when I look back now, and as I look at my career, the biggest thing I struggle with, quite honestly, is just how much time did I sacrifice from my family and from my kids to go out to the field and throw, and to travel the country and travel the world to throw. And was it worth it? I don't have any regrets looking back, but sometimes I wonder, what could have been, or what would I have done differently, I guess. But I think time has been, and that's the biggest struggle and obstacle for a lot of people. You want to be a big time powerlifter, strongman, Olympic lifter, doesn't matter, CrossFitter, who cares? You're going to have to put time in. And are we willing to do that? Is the sacrifice worth it? Or are we lazy and we're not going to do it?
Yeah, I think probably 90% of the people watching this would say that time is their biggest constraint. It may or may not be, because I'm sure that a lot of them just aren't, making an effort to put the time in when they actually have it in their schedule. But was there any tool that you used, or, how did you determine how much time you were going to allocate to training? Was it something done out of necessity because you knew you had to do X, or, how did you actually structure your schedule or come to what you're currently doing?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been I quite honestly, Brandon, I'll say it is kind of obsessive. And I think I found as I got older, I kind of have an obsessive personality. When I first started in the Highland Games, I remember driving home from that first comp with my wife. We were newly married, and I remember driving home, and I was like, babe, this is like the coolest thing I've ever done. She's like, really, huh? Like in a kill, running around throwing stuff? I was like, yeah, this is way better than track and field. This is cool. I really want to do this. And from there, it just became this obsession for a while, man, for multiple years of I was doing drills walking to the fridge, right? I'm doing toe turns and different movements. I'm not playing city league basketball because I'm afraid I'm going to bust an ankle and I'm going to miss out on my throwing season, and just obsessive to this. I went 18 months straight where rain, sleet, or snow, I didn't miss a throwing session. And that was literally 5-6 times a week, sometimes 7 days a week for 18 months straight. Now, guess what? Surprise, surprise. I got injured because I'm training 5 days a week lifting, and I'm throwing 5 to 7 days a week for 18 months straight. But I can't look back and say that didn't help me. I got so many throws and so many reps in, and perhaps what that did for me later in my career to propel me to do that. But I think that, honestly, how I finally came to grips with it is I was just obsessed with it. I was checking out the discussion boards all the time. I was checking out everybody's videos all the time. I was checking out my videos and my throwing all the time. And so I was just so obsessed with it and wanted to throw so far for about 5 years there. I think without even thinking about it, I built up thousands and thousands of throws and technique work without even making it a focus.
Well, now, you're not even counting how many times you were throwing in your head, which actually plays a big role as well when you're into it. So
that obsessive,
yeah, exactly.
That obsessive nature seems like a really common thread between all high-level athletes.
I was going to say the same thing. It's you would expect somebody that's 6 times national champion to be a little obsessed, and I think we see those common traits run across a lot of high-level athletes.
I think part of it too is you talked about having to be willing to give certain things up and make compromises and sacrifices in order to prioritize what you wanted to do, and that's something that becomes a little easier with that obsession, because if that's all you want to do, then you're going to focus more on that and push some other things to the side. Whether or not that's good or bad, it depends on the individual. But
yeah. And thankfully for me, like, surprise, surprise, I'm horrible at golf. I don't like to golf. I like to fish, but I'm bad at fishing. I like to hunt, but I'm horrible at hunting. So I kind of was like, all those like hobbies and things that guys may do or something, I was like, well, I don't have to worry about that because I don't like anything else. And so now I'm kind of coming to the end of my career, like, well, what do I do now? But I think, Brandon, to have that obsession, and I built that kind of routine that as I got later on in my career, and I'm quite honestly, I don't have the obsession anymore, right? I've scratched, you could say, a lot of studies, a lot of people say there's a 10-year itch, right? We have 10 years where we're really devoted to something. And so the last few years has been harder, right? I'd won my world championships. I've won my U.S. championships. I'd set world records. I'd accomplished everything I'd set out. And at that point, it was just, I want more titles. I want to win more. And so, but I think those years of obsession, if you will, that built the routine and built that catalog of throws that I was able to work and use that later on in my career when I decided, you know what, I'm not going to throw 6 days a week, 7 days a week. I'm only throw 3. And I was able to not get away with it, but get able to use that.
What we talked earlier about, a lot of the people coming into Highland Games come from probably a collegiate throwing background, but I think for a lot of our listeners, they're strength athletes in other disciplines who may want to dabble in some throwing events in like a summertime or something. What advice do you have to someone completely new to throwing, maybe coming from a strength background, who wants to learn, either how to compete in the Highland Games or how to throw in general?
Yeah. And absolutely, that is not to say that, well, I wasn't a college thrower, I can't ever be a pro. I have thrown, I would say, half of the throwers I've thrown with in my pro career have all been from powerlifting background or strongman background. So they're getting paid to throw things, and they've never touched a shot put or discus in their life, right? But my suggestion, honestly, is do what I did. You find a competition, I called the guy up, and I just went out there. I didn't have a kilt. Believe me, there's no shortage of kilts at games. Someone will help you out. Show up, sign up, jump in the novice group, and just learn and just have fun and decide from there if I want to do this or not. I have yet to find somebody that went to Scottish Highland Games and didn't enjoy it. They had a great time. Maybe it doesn't mean that they decided they want to jump in and do it full time and throw, and do that sport only. But at least they had a great time. And I always say, jump in. From there, you're going to meet people that are training groups, coaching groups, people that are going to have equipment you can buy or borrow or steal, and you can do those things. And just jump in there and go to a competition.
If someone's new to it and they're trying to gather equipment, what do you think the minimum amount of equipment they need to actually get started and training for it is?
Yeah, there's many more avenues than when I was when I was first starting out to get your own equipment. But man, I went to the river. Actually, I went to a landscaping place and found a river rock. I was like, hey man, I'm looking for a stone about this big and it's got to be around 16 pounds. He's like, there's a whole pile of them over there. Help yourself. And I'm like, really? Yeah. So, this is awesome. So I grab my
got a
stone.
rock.
Yeah. So there's 2 of the 8 events I'm already covered. I took 5-pound plates, duct taped them together, put a PVC pipe through it, and just capped it. And I had a hammer. Well, there's cool. There's 2 events I can throw. But they're through on Facebook and on different. You just Google Highland Games equipment, and you're going to be able to buy stuff. But if you're not for sure what you want to buy, find a throwing group on Facebook. There's so many groups out there. Find your region. And the other thing too is like reach out to me. Like I love helping people get into sport. And so if you're listening today and you like, man, I want to try the sport, hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, it doesn't matter. I will help you get to a group in your region or territory that maybe you can find a throwing group, and they're going to be able to help you out immensely.
Yeah, that's great. I don't think there's too many world champions who would say that. There's usually a barrier of entry there preventing people from doing that. So in terms of training resources, what is out there and available for people interested in training for the Highland Games? It seems like a lot of people are doing bodybuilding training, powerlifting, weightlifting, some mix of all of them and kind of creating their own plan. Is there any specialized Highland Game training programs floating around there? And would you recommend any for the listeners of this podcast?
Sure. I've got one out there. It's called Behemoth. It's on Amazon. It's on my website. It's a 14-week training program. Again, it's kind of takes you through, like we talked about already, right? Peaking for those big ones. It's going to be a 14-week progression, 3 different blocks within that. I've got that. Hit me up if you want that. I know Matt Vincent has a couple of books out there as well. He's got some training for Highland Games throwing books. A good friend of mine, Mike Bukowski, the Contrarian Throwing book, he's got that out there for training and for throwing, and there's resources out there. That's what's so cool, and I think that's why we're seeing in the sport currently why guys are hitting numbers sooner than I did. Right? It took me what took me 5 years to get to a number. Some dudes doing it in 2, some dudes doing it in 3 years, and I think that's because there's so many more resources out there now. And that's what's cool is as we can provide more resources, our sport grows, right? As the sport grows, everyone finds more success.
Yeah, no doubt. The more people who find out about it, the more popular it's going to become. That's kind of the deal with powerlifting recently, and people being exposed to it either in CrossFit or maybe different publications online. But we're kind of seeing that growth happening in our area.
Yeah, and you just end up getting more talent into the more people that know about it. You're getting bigger groups of people. You're going to have more just freaks that come out of the woodwork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People who are predisposed to strength, who are maybe in other sports, come over and hurt everyone's feelings who've been doing it for 10 years.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, what else is on your guys' mind?
Well, I was going to mention your little series of videos, Dan. You've got some videos on Instagram and Facebook, I believe, kind of spoofing on coaches in multiple different disciplines, from everything that we talked about to more. And what was the inspiration behind it? Have you heard any feelers in the process? Have you gotten any bad feedback? Tell me what's going on there.
Yeah, man. I just love to laugh, and I love just having joy and fun. And so I've always had just a goofy personality sometimes, and it drives my wife crazy at times. But I just started doing it. I work in the strength and conditioning industry, right, with strength coaches. And so I go to these schools and I see all these strength coaches and the things they do, from the hype guy waving towels and shaking racks, and to guys like that are FMS like crazy. And so I was like, man, I should just do a video for fun, just to kind of poke fun here and there. And it kind of ballooned from there. And then, track coaches to baseball coaches to everything else. And I've definitely hurt some feelings.
They're so funny though,
because people hit me up and they're like, "Dude, that was me you were talking about." I'm like, "Dude, no, that was just general." But no, it's just fun, And that's what I think is great about life. Let's poke fun at ourselves. Let's start with ourselves and poke fun. That's why I've done something about Highland Games throwers, right? You got the guys that are chasing medals and swords, to the guys that are, and just so many different quirks within our sports.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just have fun with it.
I agree. Yeah, sometimes we get too caught up in taking what we do or things a little too seriously, and you got to be able to take a step back and laugh at yourself at the same time. Even though you could be completely obsessed, right? You're in that obsessive phase, but you've got to at some point take a step back and kind of laugh at things. And I love the series, so I'm looking forward to seeing more.
I appreciate that. And you've got to laugh at some of your guys' stuff, right? I mean, I look back and I've seen some of the fails in your gym, man, where I'm like, wow, someone could have died there, but they didn't. But it's like, wow, that was really scary at the time, but now it's kind of funny that it happened like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's probably no shortage of humor around here. I don't think we take ourselves too seriously. If someone does take themselves too seriously, then they'll hear about it from someone else.
They won't last very long.
Hey,
here,
idiot,
that's for
what
sure.
are you doing?
There's a constant level of trolling that's going on here. The public only sees a very small amount of it. So
exactly,
you got to have thick skin. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I'm trying to where that is that posted on both your Instagram and your Facebook, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's typically posted on Facebook and the Instagram. I've got some powerlifting stuff out there too. So I don't know if you've seen some of those.
I have. I think didn't you do a deadlift setup one too? And
that one's been by far my most successful one, which is crazy. It's one of those, where you think, I just need a video. I'm just going to make, that takes me 5 minutes in my garage, but the ones I plan out, I write scripts for, and I'm all serious about, man, this is going to be awesome. And it totally tanks. That's how it goes, man. Yeah.
So where are those places that people can find you? How do they find you on it?
Facebook, I've got an athlete page out there. It's McKim Daniel. Then the same handle for my Instagram. I've also got a secondary Instagram account called Strength Shorts, where I post all my videos that I do, just fun videos. So to keep them in a volume, if you will. So Excellent. They're out there, and I'd love to hear your comments, suggestions, or snide remarks from anybody that wants to give them. So.
And where can our listeners find your book, your 14-week throwing plan, Behemoth?
Yeah, it's on. I've got a throwing book. I've got my training program book. I've got a throwing book where I break down every single event. And you know what? Honestly, if you can't afford it, I don't even know what it is, $20 or $10 or whatever it is. Just honestly, whoever's listening, just email me, and I'll send you a free e-copy of the book. Regardless of that, if you just want to email me, I'll send you a free copy of it. It's out on my website. It's out on different. You can find it on Amazon as well. But those two books, and I also have just a humor book out there as well. So 3 books for you to read from, and would love feedback and any way I can help.
Yeah. What's your website?
BelieveThrower.com.
Excellent. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today about all things throwing and humor related. So much appreciated. Brandon, you got any closing thoughts for today?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Dan, I want to thank you for coming on. I know this is our first, you're our first guest we've had in the Highland Games. And so that's been really fun to learn about it. And I know it's something that I've been interested in, and I think, we'll probably run with here and maybe dabble around as the weather gets a little nicer here in the Pacific Northwest. But I want to thank you for that. And then for all of our listeners, head to kabukistrength.com for all of your coaching and movement needs. Excellent.
All right. That'll close it.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, Dan. I think it was not Danny.
Oh, I was confused.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't get that right.